I'm Marisa Norcross.
And I'm Dave Freund, and this is The Next Page.
So this is weird. We're back in the same room again.
We are. Our producer, technician, whatever you want to call him, is going to have some extra work to do today.
Yeah.
But that's okay, because
Sorry,
we pay
Tim.
him. We pay Tim, so Tim's going to have to earn his living today.
Yes, it's fun though. It's like back to where we started.
It is. I can actually look over my sound screen here and see
I
you.
know.
That's good.
How's everything going this week?
Things are going very, very well. A little bit quieter week. Don't have any training this week, just a lot of coaching. But it's good.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen a lot more of you this week than normal.
Yes. What I'm finding, Marissa, is that more and more of my coaching clients want to meet here in my office, it's really nice for me because I don't have to run quite as much. But they're finding that it offers them a chance to get away from their offices, their factories, and really focus on the coaching. So I'm really pleased that they've made that transition.
That's nice.
Yep.
That's great. All right. So today we're talking about the importance of asking questions and asking the right questions, the good questions, all kinds of questions.
Right.
Tell us a little bit more about where you got this topic from.
Sure. So in some of the reading that I was doing, I came across a simple statement that said, "You didn't ask." And it really, it struck me. And I reflected back on struggles that I had as a youth, especially when I was in school, elementary school, junior high, and high school. I just never asked questions. And the reason I didn't ask questions was I didn't want to look foolish or stupid. So I just thought, well, I'm just not going to ask any questions and somebody else will. And I'm in my post that went out this morning, I basically said, thankfully, I went to a school that had big classes because there were a lot more other students to help answer or ask the questions that I was afraid to ask. And I came across this Chinese proverb that says, "He who asks is a fool for 5 minutes, but he who never asks is a fool for a lifetime." And that really, that was the way it was with me. I just was afraid. I was afraid that I'd look stupid. So I didn't ask any questions. And so then I started thinking a little bit more, and I think, well, why do I ask questions now? Well, one of the reasons why I'll ask a lot of questions now is it's easy. We've created a verb out of a company named Google. Go Google it. So if I'm willing to ask those questions, why do I still struggle with asking questions of people? And the reason is people will know that I'm not sure of something. And that really is that's really a lousy reason to not ask questions.
Right.
Now we also say, and I think I put it in my post, just kind of tongue in cheek, we think that we can ask Google because nobody really knows what we're asking, with the exception of Google, Apple, if we're using an Apple device, and the NSA, which probably knows everything we're asking, and everybody we're talking to on the phone. But yeah, questions are critical to our growth and our professional development.
So what kinds of questions should we be thinking about? I mean, I'm sure there's a long list, but do you have any favorites that we should be reflecting on?
There's actually a couple books there's one book that really stands out as being the premier book on questions, and it's one of John Maxwell's books, Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. And John goes into depth in this entire book about how you can ask questions and what kind of questions you should be asking. Then also in his book, Leadership Gold, he talks about asking questions as well. But here's just a list of some of the questions that John would say are good questions that you should be asking. And some of these, I'm going to start with the questions that you need to ask yourself, because I think that's where it starts. Where are we? Who are we? Those are questions that we need to ask ourselves. So one of the ones that John says first is, am I investing in myself? And one of the things I've found is that when I do my Making Today Matter training, a lot of people, and I find this with a lot of my coaching clients, they keep commitments that they make to everybody else, but they don't always keep commitments they make to themselves regarding time for themselves and time for growth. So investing in myself, that's a personal growth question. The other one is a question that that really, if you're going to answer it truthfully, it's going to take some real introspection. Am I genuinely interested in others? And that's a motive question. And that was something that I wrestled with for a while, and maybe we'll get back to that later. Question number 3, am I doing what I love and love what I'm doing? And if you think about that, how many people dread getting up and going to work? How many people don't like things going on in their life? And the reality is that they probably haven't asked themselves, what do I love? What do I want to do? What's my passion? So that, again, is a passion question. Am I doing what I love and loving what I do?
Can I pause you right there?
Please do.
So I really like this question. I feel like a lot of these questions that you've already mentioned, it would be easy to just say, oh, yeah, of course. Right. But when you really think about it, I think that's where you can dig deep and find the important stuff. And this question, I really like, am I doing what I love and loving what I do? Because oftentimes we can get bogged down by the negative things that are going on, for example, at work, or maybe you're having a tough time with one of your colleagues or coworkers. I like this question because it gives you an opportunity to reflect and find something to love about it. So do you have to love everything about what you're doing? No, right?
No, not at all. There are things about the job that I have now that I don't like.
Right.
It's not where my passion is, but I know that it's one of those things that I have to do as part of doing the job that I love.
Yeah, I think this is a really important question for young people in particular. I hear this a lot I have a lot of family members that are in the college age range. So they're just either getting into figuring out what they want to do with their life after high school, or some of them are actually in college right now, and they think to themselves, well, I could never do that because I don't like X, Y, and Z about it. But what I always try to remind them is that if you can find something to love about it, love a large portion of it, not necessarily all of it, it'll give you enough of that passion to push you through.
Exactly. Exactly. And you have to love something about what you do, or it's going to be drudgery and work your whole life. And that's not why we're on this earth, to hate what we do. We can find something to love and be passionate about. And when you do, there's some quote one time that I said, if you love what you do, you'll never have to work a day in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I just know that for me, getting up in the morning, as much as I am a morning person, but I don't like those first few moments as my eyes open and I kind of crawl out of bed. But once my feet hit the floor, I'm ready to go, because I'm realizing the blessing of being able to work in something and do something that I'm passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great feeling.
Yeah, I like that one.
The other one, am I investing my time with the right people?
Mm-hmm.
This is a relationship question. And I've said in some of my sessions, some of my classes, if you are in a room, if you've got people in your life that bring you down, that are sucking life out of you, you need to change your friends. And I think too is this gets to the point that I frequently make in my sessions about professional growth. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So find people, am I investing time with the right people? And this isn't only a self-serving thing. Am I investing time with people that I can add value to and that I can mentor? Not just those that are speaking into my life. Am I investing time with my family? Or is my work taking too much of my time? Those are all questions that come into that fifth question there that we're asking. I'm sorry, that was the fourth one. The fifth one, am I staying in my strength zone? A lot of people try to spend a lot of time doing things they're not good at. And that doesn't make any sense. So in Making Today Matter, one of the questions that I ask is, what are you good at? And are you spending enough time developing that? And I use an example that, I'm 6 foot tall, and not even John Wooden could make me a center on a basketball team, because you can't coach height. So what are you doing? Are you spending time in your strength zone and developing it? which is an effectiveness question. Then the next one, am I taking others to a higher level? I thought that was a great question because it's a mission question, but yet it gets to, are you living your purpose? Are you really making a difference in people's lives and helping lift them up? Then there was another one, am I taking care of today? And I thought that was great. And John refers to this as a success question. And then he follows up with this statement that he makes frequently: you will never change your life until you change something you do daily. And people miss the whole point of process, where they think that someday their life's going to get better. Well, it's only going to get better if you change what you do every day. So are we doing the right things every day? The next one he had here was, am I taking time to think? And that gets, I remember I wrote about that maybe a year and a half ago about thinking, and John would go into a long discussion about where he has a place where he thinks, how he thinks his thoughts, those type of things. But unless you're thinking and spending time thinking, you won't be able to come up with the right questions. And then another one here, are you developing other leaders? This came up in, I'm trying to think where this came up. I think it was in a coaching session that I had where I actually was talking with a leader, and I said, are you developing other leaders? Because if you're not developing other leaders, you're not going to be able to move to the next level yourself. And I also brought this up. I did a teaching on Saturday for the Central New York School Boards Association for their board presidents and vice presidents. And I said the same thing to them. Are you developing your other board members to be leaders so that you can really take your organizations to the next level, your districts to the next level? So, Marisa, I didn't tell you I was going to ask this question, but are there questions that you frequently resort to expand your life and your growth?
I have my own kind of rendition of, am I investing my time with the right people?
Okay.
Essentially asking the same thing, because I always think about, the way you invest your time, which is finite. You don't have all the time in the world.
Right.
It says a lot about the decisions you're making,
Mm-hmm.
Because it is a decision. If I choose to spend my evenings catching up on emails, I'm saying no to spending that time with my husband and my daughter.
Right.
So I use that kind of as a grounding or, kind of check-in with myself when I start to feel like maybe I'm not in the right place or don't have my priorities lined up correctly, because I think where you invest your time just says so much about you.
Exactly.
And so I use that one a lot to bring myself back to what's important and what really matters.
Good. Some of the other things that I was thinking of when I jotted down some thoughts here is that questions unlock and open doors that otherwise remain closed.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was pondering that, my guess is about 2.5 years ago, when I first was digging into this topic of questions, I actually wrote this down as a reflection question for myself. What doors have opened based on questions I've asked? So you kind of use your questioning and your reflection to fine-tune your questioning. And then I started digging a little deeper, and I realized that questions make other people feel valued. I think about the leaders that think they have to have all the answers. No, they just need to ask the right questions.
Right.
And you can pull out of the people that are working with you their thoughts, and I'm sure it makes me feel valued when somebody says, hey, what are your thoughts about this?
Mm-hmm.
And it also lets us connect in a much deeper way. Too many people too many people think that they can connect by telling others about themselves, when really that just, in a lot of cases, repulses people. What they really want to do is tell you their story. So if you ask somebody, hey, what's your story? Why are you, why do you do what you do? Why are these your hobbies? Help me understand that. Questions will keep you humble, because it's always good to admit there's things you don't know. Questions open our minds and give us different perspectives. And I thought that was really interesting. And one of John Maxwell's notes on that was, the future belongs to the curious.
Yep. I was just going to say, imagine what kind of innovation we'd be missing out on if people didn't ask questions.
Exactly. Exactly. And, you and I have been talking over the last couple of days about being intrigued and interested in what a lot of our member companies make and how that might be utilized throughout the world. And there's so many great stories. My son Tim is extremely curious about everything. And yesterday when I got home, actually before I even got home, I heard that there's a house up on Rose Hill Road that he was intrigued by. So he just started doing all this research on this house because he was intrigued by it. He keeps searching more and more questions. He'd find something and it raises more questions. And by the time I got home, because I got home a little bit later last evening, he had this whole presentation almost that he was sharing with me about this house that belonged to this guy that started a seed company, and he could show me where these different seed houses were. And it was just because he was curious. And here was a man that back in the 1860s was born, started a business that literally sent seeds all around the world just because he was curious about things and wanted to try things. And so many of our member companies have those same things. People ask questions. Imagine where we would be if Willis Carrier hadn't asked the question, can we find a way to cool the air?
So
of course,
true.
probably the real estate in, the northern part of our country would be at a premium rather than the southern states. But anyways. So yeah, that's great. And I love this statement, and I don't remember exactly who said it. Millions saw an apple fall, but Newton asked why. So something as simple as that, an apple fell, and Sir Isaac Newton said, so why did it fall? Well, it fell because of gravity. But nobody else was thinking about it. So somebody is thinking those deeper thoughts.
So before we close out here, what are the best questions that you've ever asked?
So the best questions that I've ever asked. I started thinking about this list because I've seen John's list of questions that he's asked. So I'm going to go over, I think I have 5 or 6 that are what I would call are the questions that changed my life. So, excuse me. We knew one of us was going to cough sooner or later.
Better you than me.
Exactly. So the first question that I wrote down here, and I hope it doesn't offend anybody, but because I'm a person of faith, when I was about 17 years old, I basically asked God to show me his power. And to make a very, very long story short, I was in an automobile accident where clearly my car was not even damaged, and I don't know how it occurred. Other cars were, but mine wasn't. So that was a spiritual awakening type of question for me. The next question that truly changed my life was when I asked my wife to marry me.
Aww.
And if you think about the fact that how my life would be different if I hadn't asked.
Very different.
Exactly. I can't imagine my life without her. And yet it came down to a question that had to be asked. The next question that I wrote here is, what's wrong with me? And that was a question that I asked about 6 years ago when I was really, really struggling at work. But I didn't know why. And I asked 2 friends of mine that were extremely experienced businessmen. Basically, I shared with them what I was feeling, and so what's wrong with me? And reality was I was facing some real serious burnout. But that is the question that I asked that got me moving toward the direction of learning to know John and John's leadership teachings.
I like that because it's nothing fancy. It's
No.
not eloquent.
Nope.
It's not long. It's not detailed. It's very simple.
Right. And then that led me about 3 years ago to ask the question, how do I want to spend the rest of my life? Because I made a direct transition or like a turn in my professional career. I thought that what I wanted to do was always run a business and operate it as the president or CEO of a company. And what I realized was that isn't what I wanted to do. But I had to ask myself that question. And that led me to also 2 other questions. one that's a nice question to ask and another one that's the not so nice question to ask. But the first one was, what are my greatest strengths? That one was kind of easy to ask people to give me help with that one. But the next one was, what are my greatest weaknesses? And I remember asking that question. Part of my my certification program was to ask two people close to me the answer to that question. And one of them was my wife, and another was a good friend of mine that I grew up with. And I remember the answer that my wife gave, and she left it kind of in an email type thing on a computer that we shared, where she had to say to me, one of your greatest weaknesses is that you don't value people enough. And I had to really look at my life and say, is she right? And the answer was, she was. I was living my life, I thought, as a good person, doing the things that I should do to help people, but I didn't have a passion for adding value to people. I liked being around people for what they brought into my life, not what I could bring into their life. And I could easily say, well, that's my behavioral profile, and there's nothing I can do about it. No, there is something you can. And that was that I determined that every day I was going to intentionally strive to add value to other people. And that's the way that I had to work on overcoming what I thought was a character issue, not a skill issue. So those were the questions that came to mind, when I thought about what questions have really changed my life. But they're kind of deep but simple. But, you don't even need to start with those. In my post, I talk about simple questions that you could use to stimulate your own questioning. What's the problem? If we're having a bad day, why? Is the problem me? Is it work? Is it a situation? In what area of my life am I facing challenges? And we've talked about these are not obstacles. They may be bridges, the foundations for bridges to a greater position in our life, a greater learning. Who can speak into my life at this time? And I think that's a great one. If we think about who do I need to bring alongside me? We're working on trying to fill a position here at MACNY of somebody that's going to work closely with me. And these are conversations that you and I've had, about who is it that, what type of person do we need to speak into my life to help me with my role here? And those are the type of questions. And then the next question is, how can I gain access to them? So a lot of our members might say, our listeners might say, well, I really need to find a mentor. Okay, find one. And they're going to say, well, how? Well, part of MACNY is our networking events. How many councils do we have, Marisa?
We'll have 9 after the new year.
Wow, 9.
And each of them meet like 6 to 8 times a year.
And so these are functional councils based on a job function. And if they're an individual member, they can attend all of them, correct?
Correct.
So that's a small investment of monetary wise, very small, but you gain access to a large group of people, and you build relationships, and next thing you know, you've got these people that you can have speak into your life. And the other one is, are you asking people to speak into your life? There's so many people that are experts in certain areas. Ask them. And the other one is books. I first met John Maxwell in a book, not in person. I didn't go to a conference. I met him in person. Now, after meeting him I met him in a book, After meeting him in books and learning from him and being mentored by him through his books, then I was privileged enough to meet him in person and have him speak into my life. But there's so many different avenues for us to connect with people, but we just need to make the effort and do it. And one of the notes here I made is, once you get to a point where questions are your friends, you are well on your way to significant growth. Because growth really is determined by the questions we ask. And I just another couple points here. Good questions inform you, but great questions transform you. So, you ask those questions, and all of a sudden it's a given that you're going to find transformation in your life, because there's new thoughts that are being created. And then I had another little note here. The difference between ordinary and extraordinary is just a little extra. And it takes effort, but just a little extra effort to really move from just living your life to leading a significant life. And the effort's going to come in asking questions. So as I'm thinking about time that I spend with family, what kind of questions do I want to ask them? We talked about, my grandson and being a bucket filler or a dipper type of thing. And I also learned that just before the Thanksgiving holiday, teachers and principals were expressing to the students what they were grateful for. And I thought, see, they're getting these youngsters in kindergarten. They're already helping them understand the value of adding value to people and asking good questions. It was really exciting to hear that. Yeah, it really is. So again, kudos out to those in the West Hill District and specifically the Walberta School. So.
All right, I have one last question.
Please.
Any hints what we're talking about next week?
Pain.
Ooh.
Pain. Yep.
That's unexpected.
That came to me yesterday. So we're going to talk about pain.
Cool.
So, any plans for the weekend?
Well, as we're recording right now, it's the week of Thanksgiving.
Right.
So, I'm looking forward to some family time and a long weekend.
Good.
Yeah, how about you?
The same. Not all my family's going to be here. My daughter and her 3 children and her husband will not be with us for Thanksgiving, but all of my local kids, God willing, will be able to be with us and spending a lot of days working on the bathroom renovation.
Oh,
Still. It's a long process, and I'm not as quick as I used to be. But that's still good. I enjoy it. It's like relaxing for me.
Good.
So we want to thank everyone for listening. Want to remind you to subscribe. Please send feedback. Send us emails. If you can, get on iTunes and leave us a review, a recommendation type thing. But you do need a nickname for that to happen, I guess, because it will help us get noticed. I mean, our reach is going as far west as California and the state of Oregon, as far east as, I guess we could say Japan, but that was a while ago. But we do have listeners up in Maine and as far south as Florida. So
awesome.
We'd love to have that expand because we believe that this adds value to people's lives. So with that, I'm Dave Freund.
I'm Marisa Norcross.
And this was The Next Page.